What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 147. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this podcast where all we do is talk about movies here, either new movies that come out in streaming or in theaters. We'll give you some high-level thoughts, opinions, recommendations whether you should check it out in theaters or skip it. And then we wrap up the podcast by deciding, after one viewing, is this movie timeless? Is this something that I would want to rewatch in the future, various different times? Now, sometimes you can agree with my opinion, sometimes you won't, but that's the fun thing about kind of discussing these types of movies is, what works for me might not work for you. And so if you want to have your opinion voiced on the podcast, check out the description down below. You can actually interact with me on social media places like Threads, Instagram, as well as Blue Sky. There's also the timelessmoviepod@gmail.com email. So if you have any questions or thoughts or things that you would want to have brought up on the Timeless Movie Podcast, let me know. Also, Timeless Movie Podcast is available on platforms like Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. Follow us, subscribe, leave us a review, leave us some comments. I would love to get more interaction and build a community, just talking about movies and voicing our opinions, obviously in a very nice way. Speaking of voicing our opinions, episode 146 of the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on the platforms that I just mentioned. And I ended up talking about Spike Lee's newest film, Highest to Lowest. It stars Denzel Washington and Jeffrey Wright. I had such a blast watching this movie in theaters. So if you have seen Highest to Lowest and want to check out my opinion on if I thought it was timeless, then go watch and listen to episode 146. And again, leave a comment, leave a review. Let me know what you thought about that movie as well. All right, let's go ahead now and segue into this week's episode and this week's movie, in which we are talking about Focus Features' newest film, Honey Don't. This one is directed by Ethan Coen, one half of the Coen brothers, and it stars Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, Charlie Day, and a couple of other folks as well. Background thoughts as to why I wanted to watch this movie is because of the four actors that I just named: Chris Evans, Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Charlie Day. Those are just actors that I want to check out, mostly because, again, they're funny, and some of the prior movies that I've seen them in have either brought me some type of joy and just excited to watch them work even more. In regards to Ethan Coen, this is actually his second film without his brother, Joel. And so I actually didn't get to see his first film in 2024, Drive Away Dolls, but that one also starred Margaret Qualley. I have seen some of the Coen brother films like Fargo, as well as No Country for Old Men. Again, I thought that they were pretty good. I know that some people really regard No Country for Old Men as one of the masterpieces in film. I'm not there. I thought it was good. I didn't love it or anything. I guess to fit the podcast itself, I didn't think it was timeless, but maybe that's a hot take. So let me know if you agree or disagree with me in regards to No Country for Old Men not being timeless. Anyway, now that Honey Don't has come out, let's go ahead and move over to the non-spoiler thoughts. That way I can kind of give you a good sense as to what the plot is about and my overall thoughts. Okay, Honey Don't is directed by Ethan Coen, like I mentioned. The screenplay is done by Ethan Coen and Trisha Cook, which is Ethan's wife, and it stars a slew of actors, which I have already repeated multiple times, but let's do it one more time. Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and Charlie Day. The story is basically revolving around a private investigator named Honey. Honey is played by Margaret Qualley. She ends up stumbling onto a incident where somebody was murdered, or at least it seems that way. A woman drove off of a cliff and was basically killed. And so as she's kind of pulling on different types of threads and figuring out what the heck could have happened, could somebody have almost like pushed her to this point or maybe killed her before she actually drove off the cliff? And as she's figuring these things out, she starts noticing that there's connections to a church, notices that there's other characters that are also involved in this situation. And so it all gets very interesting in this whole kind of mysterious plot that takes place in Bakersfield, of all places. So that's essentially what the story is about. Overall, my opinions on Honey Don't is I didn't really like it. I was really hoping that I would enjoy this film. Again, it has actors that I have enjoyed watching in the past, but I don't know. I left the theater with such a dissatisfied feeling and almost like a feeling of, well, oh, they just didn't nail it. They didn't nail the landing and a couple of other parts within the movie. Now, I do want to make it clear. It's not like I'm saying that, like, yeah, I had such high expectations. I was hoping that this movie would be the best of the year. That those weren't my expectations. I was just really hoping for a fun and just a joyful time, knowing that there's a couple of comedic actors here, hoping that it would be funny, but no, it just left me with a bad taste in my mouth, which is never a feeling you want after you leave the theater. Let me give you a couple of pros and cons. Yes, I do have a couple of pros, even though I didn't enjoy my time watching this movie, but I still can pick at some things that I really did like. So let's move over to that to kind of give you a little bit more color as to what my experience was like. First pro of Honey Don't that I really enjoyed was the costume design or the costuming that the characters had. Uh, Anytime the characters and you would see them in these scenes, they would always be wearing this clothes that just I don't know, it just fit their character, it fit the vibe of what they were going for. Main star of this is Margaret Qualley as Honey. Honey would just always wear these like really cool kind of like button ups and like these pantsuits. She was a private investigator, but she would just dress the part. It just aesthetically it just made sense. And then you had other characters that would always again kind of also have their own types of attire that would just fit with what they were doing. Again, whether it was Reverend Drew played by Chris Evans, he would obviously wear more of those kind of gowns that you would see a preacher wear. But outside of that, he'd also wear kind of different types of clothes. So again, overall, I enjoyed the clothes that they had and the aesthetic and the vibe that they were going for in this movie. It just all worked. Second pro for me that I want to call out is the performances. Although I didn't enjoy the story or what was going on, and again, the screenplay and the dialogue just maybe, just needed some work, I can still give props to Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and Charlie Day. I mean, with what they were given, it was still enjoyable. I still had a good time whenever they would interact, when those characters would be in scenes together. It would at least be interesting. I wouldn't be bored. I was just curious to know, okay, what little tidbits can they give me about this mystery? Who was involved in this type of crime? And what can I get from these characters in order to see or figure out who's telling the truth or who's lying as well? So the performances, in those specific moments was a positive. It's just when you look at it from the bigger picture, it just didn't land. So now that I've kind of mentioned that it didn't land for me, let me jump into the cons, which these cons, again, are going to outweigh the pros big time. First con that I have to give Honey Don't is it just was not funny for me. And I want to make it clear, comedy is subjective. What is not funny for me might be funny for you, and I totally respect that, but I just did not find any of the jokes just land. None of them actually made me laugh out loud. And I know that it's not fair that you would want a movie to do that, but when it is framed as like a crime or thriller comedy, and they have that comedy included within it, and especially the fact that you have Aubrey Plaza and Charlie Day, who are from shows that are loved by millions of people that are comedic shows, you would expect that some of these punchlines, some of these lines of dialogue would just land more, and it just did not. And so that I think is probably one of the biggest factors as to why I walked away just not having a good time with this movie is every time they try to set up a punchline, every time they try to set up a joke, it just did not make me laugh. And it wasn't just me. This is, again, very small sample size. In the theater that I watched it at AMC, rarely did you ever hear anybody laugh out loud. And so that's never a good sign when you're really trying to provoke some type of an emotion from the audience and it just doesn't get there. So one big con. Second one is the resolution of the movie. How it actually wraps up and ends was not satisfying for me. I felt like almost like as if the movie was incomplete. Like I needed more. Like once it ended, I was like, no way, hold on. I feel like there's a couple of threads, some things that they opened up, and I'm still looking for more understanding as to how this related to the story overall. So I just, again, another feeling that you don't want. You don't want a comedy not to be funny. And then you also don't want your story that deals with the mystery to almost feel like it never resolved itself. And that is just unbelievable that I just didn't get that feeling. Again, it could be me, but I don't know. I'm really curious to know your guys' thoughts. So again, if you have seen it and you think I'm crazy, you're like, no, Victor, you're missed the point completely. Let me know down below in the comments. Okay, I'm pretty sure you can guess what my recommendation is going to be, but just to make it very clear, my recommendation is for Honey Don't, you can actually skip this movie. I don't feel like it's worth your time. It's actually only an hour and 28 minutes, but I just don't feel like there's much there for you to enjoy it. No disrespect to Ethan Coen, no disrespect to any of the actors that I've mentioned, but I just feel like it needed a lot more work in order to make it very interesting, very funny. And so, my opinion, you can go ahead and skip this movie. Don't have to check it out in theaters. All right, that's enough of the non-spoiler thoughts. Very obviously strong opinions in regards to my experience of it. But I do want to actually let you guys know that if you don't want to be spoiled, please jump out of the video now because we are now going to be moving into the spoiler section where I will decide if Honey Don't is timeless. So again, if you don't want to be spoiled of this movie, if you do plan to check it out, even though I said you could skip it, please jump out of the video now, watch the movie, then come back. That way you can hear my expanded thoughts of my enjoyment, or at least my not enjoyment of this movie. All right, hopefully that gives you enough time. Let's go ahead and answer the first question, which is really the important question of this podcast. Is Honey Don't timeless? Is it something that I would want to rewatch in the future? Now, just because a movie isn't great, it could be terrible, doesn't mean it can't be timeless. There's a couple of bad movies that people love to rewatch. Honey Don't for me is not the case in this example. For me, Honey Don't is not a timeless movie. And let me tell you a couple of reasons why. I kind of mentioned these as some of the cons in the non-spoiler section, but let me expand on it a little bit more. First one is the resolution, which I think I just have to really get off my chest. I can't understand why they could not find a better way to resolve and wrap up this movie. So let me tell you how it actually ends. It basically ends with Honey finding out that this girl that she's seeing, MG Falcone, who is a police officer, and MG is played by Aubrey Plaza. They have a relationship. They have very intimate moments, and you start seeing their relationship grow, and then you find out that the twist, MG is actually somebody that is abusing people, taking advantage of people, and she actually ends up kidnapping and trying to abuse Honey's niece. That's the twist, and that's how it ends. Why is that so frustrating? Well, MG actually has nothing to do with the murders that they set up at the beginning of the movie. A couple of other people get murdered as well. There is no connection, no correlation. And so by the time you get to that fact that, okay, well, MG was somebody that was not who we expected, you would think Honey would then try to go back to the beginning of that cold case and try to figure out who murdered this individual. No, the movie just ends. And so that just was so confusing. I couldn't believe it. I wanted there to be more of an actual resolution. To me, if you want to set up a crazy twist like Aubrey Plaza's character of MG being the person that abuses somebody or abuses the niece of Honey, I would say that let's just set the whole movie in regards to finding Honey's niece. Let's just set up that type of a story. That way, we actually have a through line from beginning to end. I just felt like there was no connection to what we were watching in the first and second act to what happens in the third act. And so I just felt like everything kind of just resolved itself, but not really, because there's still a couple of cold cases out there. Honey didn't really find an answer. Then you have Chris Evans' character of Reverend Drew. He has this very weird church cult that deals with sex, and you think that has something to do with it, and then he ends up getting shot and killed, and that's how his story ends. And so, very weird. I just did not enjoy that type of a setup and then resolution, if there was any. So that's my biggest kind of reason why it's not timeless. Is just you have no real through line in regards to what this story is trying to say. Second reason why this is not timeless is the comedy of it. Again, I mentioned that before. So I actually feel like this film would have worked better if we just moved away from the comedy. Let's not try to set up punchlines. Let's not try to set up jokes. Instead, have these comedic actors in a very serious type of an environment. Let them actually try to resolve a mystery or a crime, and then relieve some of the tension by having them be in situational humor or situational scenes, like Charlie Day kind of just saying something, a one-off line that makes everybody laugh. That I think would have worked a lot better. Instead, they try to make it serious, but then at the same time funny, and it just would not work. The tone of the movie just never had its footing, and so I never could really grasp like, okay, should I be laughing here? Should I be very like creeped out because of what's going on? It just never gave me that right sense of feeling. And when a movie can't land that in the first 15 minutes, that is just it's just not a good sign. So those are again some of the bigger reasons as to why it is not timeless. I never like to end these kind of discussions in a negative. So let me kind of just end with a couple of miscellaneous notes that I thought were positive. Um, I actually really enjoyed some of the music that they played in this movie. They had a couple of cool needle drops, like at the beginning. It's like you have a camera inside of a car, and you're kind of going through the city of Bakersfield, and it kind of just shows you like the opening credits. But it actually plays a really cool song, and that's case of the intro of the movie. There's also a couple of cool needle drops throughout the film as well. So that's one of the positives. Second positive I also want to say is that there's also really well done transitions, like transitions from scene to scene. Sometimes it would go from like being at a bar into a pool. Sometimes it would be like you're in a restaurant, and then there's like a loud noise, and then it's like somebody clapping, and it transitions into actual police headquarters. And so just the transitions overall and the fades that were done in the movie from scene to scene, I thought was just executed in a really good way. So wanted to at least end on some positives in regards to Honey Don't. But like I always mention in every podcast, guys, those are just my opinions. I could be way off. Maybe people really love this movie. Maybe this is a hidden gem. If it is, let me know down below. If you're on Spotify and YouTube, there is a comment section. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed Honey Don't and if you maybe think it's timeless. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. That way we can hear your thoughts and opinions on this movie. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to all of my thoughts in regards to Honey Don't. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 147 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we discuss and we go through a new movie and we try to decide if it is timeless. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you later.